Hello, podcast listener. This is your host with the most. We're going to talk about road trips. We're going to talk about where Sesame Street belongs in the dimensional corridor, and also some good talk about times Tucker and I have enjoyed in Kentucky. Sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of JJ Meets World, whether you're on a road trip or not. And by the way, if you'd like to help support our podcast, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some killer swag at our merch shop, or click the link to Apple Podcast and give us a 5-star review.
1, 2, 3, 4. J.J. Gordon, sort of like that Indiana Jones, in that he's always sniffing out his next adventure. Yes, he is. He's always interviewing guests so he can have them on his show and they can talk about pop culture, arts, and leisure. J.J. has his flag unfurled and he likes his french fries curled, and he's fun and then he twirled as he goes to meet the world. He will march into the rain even if his ankle sprained. Take a peek inside his brain. This podcast is called JJ Meets World.
Tucker, I want to dedicate this episode of JJ Meets World to the Great American Road Trip.
Okay. Where are we going
about that?
Where are we going?
Oh, we're going to stay in our studio, but I thought we could talk about the actual road trip. So recently, I was watching
like a theater of the mind road trip somewhere.
Okay, if that's the start of this, it's here we go. Okay, well, are you ready? Have you gone to the bathroom?
Oh, not yet. Hold on 1 second.
Okay, he's been in there for half an hour.
I'm ready to go.
Okay, I better go before we leave, just in case.
Yep, I'll wait right here.
Drive. It went west. No, I love a good road trip. And recently I was watching an SNL sketch by the just absolutely amazing Please Don't Destroy group. And it was with Jenna Ortega, and it's going on a road trip. Woo! And it's them going on this great all-American road trip. But the things that happen on a road trip that drive you absolutely nuts. For example, whoever is doing the navigation is also in charge of the playlist. And, things just, they don't work out the way you think it's going to work out. And I have been lucky enough to go on a lot of road trips with my family, some solo, and then some with my friends, touring with the Linebenders, being a touring comedian. I had a chance to go on a lot of different road trips and see a lot of different places with people that I love and I respect. And I want to start with one of the most epic road trips I ever took, which was with you, Tucker Lucas.
Oh yeah, I was thinking you were going to talk straight up about you and Nilly, but I guess we just talked about Tijuana or whatever it was.
We discussed that road trip, which was pretty good. And I got a lot of feedback from that episode, some good, some bad. Some people are like, that's not the way Nilly told it. And I'm like, well, of course, why would he tell you that he had his underpants ripped off by what was a gentleman of the night, it turns out, in Tijuana, But on this one, you and I were headed to visit your grandmother in Kentucky by way of Chicago. One of the things I like the most about this road trip is we took off from Fargo and we started driving to Chicago, and there were 3 of us in the initial takeoff, and we had our friend and previous JJ Meets World guest Sabrina with us. And you really find out a lot about another human being when you're stuck in a car with them for a lengthy amount of time. You really find out the strange little proclivities that they have. You can really find out how much patience a person has. And by the way, absolutely no shade if you're someone who's got a long fuse or a short fuse when it comes to road trips, because I have definitely been there where I've been the one yelling like, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?" And I've also been the one like, "Hey man, just relax, chill out. It's just a flat tire, Holmes. Ain't no big deal. Call the auto club." And on that trip to Chicago for the first leg of the journey, so we get going, and we at one point see something that says cheese food in Wisconsin.
Okay, yeah, I was trying to recall that memory. I'm like, every time I think of that road trip, I remember some big cheese sign.
Yeah, and it was saying, like, it was a sign saying cheese and food available, but Sabrina interpreted the sign as cheese food. Like they've got foods that are cheese, and cheese is a food. And I think she was always mad that we didn't stop to see whatever cheese food was. And I was like, hey man, this is Wisconsin. You got a lot of opportunities when it comes to cheese food.
Knowing her as well as we do now, that actually makes a lot of sense, because Sabrina's definitely a roadside attraction type of gal.
Oh, definitely. She'd have the best time on Route 66.
Yeah. Oh, the biggest frying pan. Well, I know what I'm doing today.
Do you think they cook on it?
I bet they could.
So on this trip, one of my favorite parts of the drive from Fargo to Chicago is when you're going past the Camp Douglas area in Wisconsin, because they're just giant pieces of rock that jut out of the earth, and it feels like you're in a completely other part of the country, but you're in Wisconsin. I enjoy going through the dells. It's amazing how much of our country looks similar. Like if you were to just pick someone up and drop them off in Madison, Wisconsin, without any, team monikers or anything like that, and then you blindfolded them and then plucked them, dropped them down the middle of West Fargo, I don't know if they would know the difference,
right,
if I'm going to be blatantly honest. But you do see some little amazing things on the side of the road. Tommy Bartlett is the gentleman who was famous in the Dells for having like Tommy Bartlett's Robot World, Bartlett's Butterfly Exhibit, Tommy Bartlett's Skiing Wonder Beauties. And that was something I always really regretted not getting into more, because they've closed down a lot of the Tommy Bartlett branded stuff.
His empire has fallen.
Yeah, he was the king of the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s when it came to road tripping through the state of Wisconsin. Wisconsin's also interesting too, because I've always heard it tell, and this could be just an old wives' tale, but I've heard it tell that if you are from out of state, you have to pay your speeding ticket on site. And the speeding tickets in Wisconsin are enormous. They do not want people speeding, and I believe they dropped it to like 70 or 65 is the speed limit. And so if you're going 80, you could have a $200 ticket, and you've got to pay it on site before you can go. And if you can't pay it, they essentially like detain you. They don't arrest you, but they detain you until you can get someone to call in and get this information. Then I think you have to add a tow to the whole rigmarole.
Oh my God.
Maybe that's not true, but I always drive the speed limit when I'm in Wisconsin. I try and make that a point for me.
I hope the local PD picks up on that, because then they know, well, he's not in Wisconsin right now, and the KFGO studios are just a hop, skip, and a jump away from us. You're gonna get parking ticket trapped.
Speed ticket trapped. So? Yeah, maybe. 100%. Maybe.
Imagine if they put up like a little trap just right outside the parking lot of KFGO. You're fucked.
I don't speed in the city. We're talking about highway travel here, interstate travel.
Got it.
Where a man wants to put his pedal to the metal. You want to feel the ground shake underneath you.
How well do you and Jill road trip?
Not well.
Yeah. So it's mostly with your buddies.
So I could do like Jill and I road tripping from Fargo to Minneapolis, no sweat. Right. But any further than that, we've kind of run out of the playlists of the mutual music we enjoy. There's not a lot like left going on for us to do that's entertaining. I love her, but she's horrible when it comes to navigation. And I'm horrible because my fuse is extremely short with her, which is completely unfair because she's done nothing wrong. But I'm like, I'm very agitated when I'm out and about on a road trip like that.
Do you think if you were like a touring comedian, you would be doing a tour bus, or would you be on planes?
If I'm big enough to be able to fly around, I want to do it on a plane. But the fact of the matter is that by the time you're big enough where they could start flying you around to places, you're no longer really a touring comedian.
I'm thinking of like Bert Kreischer. He does like a tour bus.
He does a tour bus everywhere, right? Yep. Does a tour bus everywhere. I think that's because he has like a whole pantheon of people who are with him. And I don't know if you saw his show, but his show is not just like a put up and take down. There's a lot of effort that goes into, the arena shows that he's doing now. So it makes sense to me that he is on a bus. But I guarantee you, if there's 3 days and the bus is driving across the state of Canada, Bert no longer is in that bus. And it's really, he's not really in a bus. He's more like in an RV.
Okay.
Type thing. I guarantee you that he's flying from one place to the other, or flying home for a couple days and then flying back out. Same thing with, take like Steve Martin and Martin Short, right? So they're on tour together right now, but they're not bussing everywhere. They're not driving in a car somewhere. They're flying them from one place to the other. And that's what I would love. I'd love to get to that level. But I also think that what I would probably be is like Mike Birbiglia in Sleepwalk with Me, which is I'd be driving a Honda Accord hoping that I could get another gig in before I have to get an oil change or address the fact that there's smoke coming out of from underneath the back seat. Those are the real like stand-up comedians of the world who are out there touring. I've never traveled in an RV in my life. I've never traveled where you can just pull over wherever and you can sleep.
Because I mean, those vehicles, there's a certain size they get to where I'm like, I just don't think I'd be comfortable even driving this thing, because the stress of driving something that large will just kind of become too much, right? I feel like, something that's obviously larger than, say, my Forester for sure, but just enough to like be able to lay down maybe, and that's probably about it, right? I mean, what else would you really need beyond that?
I drove a car or an RV from Fargo to Grand Forks, where it's going to be put away for the year. And that was one of the most stressful drives that I have ever had in my entire life. I was unhappy the entire time. It was so stressful, so incredibly stressful. And I would love probably to travel in an RV if I was saying, listen, I'm going to leave from Fargo and we're driving down to Florida. And then at the end of the trip, we're going to commit insurance fraud and burn down the RV and fly home. Or pretend it got stolen and then just drive it into the ocean. That is probably what I'd like.
You just need to fly to Florida, rent an RV for the day, have someone park it at a national park for you, take some Instagram photos, and then, return at the end of the day, fly back. It's as though you did it.
Do you know that like in an RV, they've got a special type of brake, because you can't, like, there's so much weight, like when you're going downhill, that you can actually burn out the brakes.
That does not surprise me at all.
And so there are areas on a lot of roadways where if you are in a runaway truck or RV or semi, essentially it allows you, it's a big area filled with sand that you drive into, where your momentum is not immediately ceased, but essentially it'll slow you down and bring you to a stop in a safer manner than just like careening it directly into the side of a mountain.
Yeah, I've seen those. I've seen those a lot. I've only seen one used once, luckily. But I've never, I mean, that would scare the hell out of me. When I used to do the poker tour, we used to do a space in Colorado that was way up in the mountains. And we had a guy who would drive this gigantic production truck. I mean, larger than like a school bus, way larger. And he would have to drive that up and down the flipping mountains of Colorado. And I would get anxiety driving up and down those mountains just in like the little SUV that we were in. So I cannot imagine someone actually choosing to want to do that. I can't imagine being like a semi truck driver going through a mountainous region. I would be stressed out. I'd be stressed out in North Dakota, which is the exact opposite.
Right. She flat over here, baby. She flat. Do you remember any family road trips that you took over, like when you were a kid, that were like, yeah, this is the one where my family really had an opportunity to bond together?
Well, I mean, the best road trips we took were always once a year when we go to Kentucky. Because then it was going to Mama Luke's house, which was just magical to be at. So, I mean, all of the Kentucky trips kind of blur into one. We weren't really big. Hey, let's go over here and then let's go over there as a family. We did that once when Dad was married to Pat. We did like a week or two in, I think, South Dakota. So that was when I went and saw Mount Rushmore, and we stayed at a couple camping parks or whatever. I feel like that was like almost a 2-week trip. It was sort of a big one. But beyond that, no, I mean, it's pretty much we'd go to the lakes with mom or to Kentucky with dad.
All of my grandparents lived nearby, and so it was really rare for us to go on a road trip longer than, the Twin Cities. And I remember we did one summer where my parents were like, nope, we're going to do a 2.5-week trip and we're going to see a big chunk of America around us. And so we did North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana, Wyoming, a little bit of Idaho, and we maybe touched into Nebraska a little bit. And just the tip. We did a lot of Yellowstone while we were out there, Jackson Hole. I mean, we were all over the place. And then my mom and I had a road trip once that was pretty epic, where my sister was going to stay with some friends in Bismarck for a week. And so we drove her out to Bismarck, and my mom was like, I don't think I've ever seen the Peace Gardens. And JJ just got his driver's permit, so let's get him some experience behind the road. So she called my dad and she goes, listen, we're going to drive up to Minot. We're going to stay overnight. We're going to see the Peace Gardens. And then we're going to drive across the southern tip of Canada and stay in Winnipeg for a couple days and then drive home. And I thought this was amazing, right? And at that point, I mean, I knew very little about the difference between miles and kilometers. And so I was like, hey, getting to use this other part of the speedometer that you don't normally get to use. And I got some really good driving in during that whole ordeal. And my mom and I were great road trippers. In fact, we dropped my sister off at college in Colorado. And my mom and I did a great job road tripping back, because my mom and I are two people who are like, we're not going to stop until we want to. Right. So we could listen to a book on tape. We could be driving and it's like 6:00 and it's like, should we stop for dinner? No, we'll stop for dinner at like midnight. We'll pull over to some Greasy Spoon and eat at that point. And so we're good at getting from like one point to another, but we weren't stop and like get out and look at things type people. Sure. Now my mom did that with my grandfather. I love the fact that the last few years of my grandfather's life, he would fly down to Arizona where he spent the winter, and my mom would then drive down and drive back with him from Arizona. And so it was a great way for my grandfather to kind of experience, driving back and getting to see a little bit of America and stopping and looking at different things. And she and he really bonded, I think, during those times. And, like there were times I think where your dad had told me about when they would go to your uncle's place. It's not a drive. It's not a road trip, but it's a trek from like Mama Luke's place to get to Tim's place.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like a solid 3.5, 4 hours.
And so
at that time it was, for sure.
He would tell me stories about like, yeah, there was a time when Mama Luke and I would get to go and be on this road trip together. And I was like, that's awesome. I'm glad that you had that time, because when you're a kid, it's different to road trip with your parent when you're little versus when you're an adult, because you can start sharing the load when it comes to driving. You can have some input into where you're going to eat. You can get some input into where you're going to stop. You can actually, in a way, you're forced to have certain conversations that you wouldn't normally have unless you're listening to a podcast like JJ Meets World.
Yeah. Actually last time I was down in Arkansas, Dad and I spent a lot of time in a car together, and we just had great time, had great conversations. It was really nice to catch up. And in that context, it's kind of nice because you've got kind of a shared goal you're doing that day at the same time. And so it is pretty nice. It is basically, it's just the two of you or three of you, whoever else is there, in a little capsule together. And like, you really can't go anywhere else. Although, you know what, like you and I grew up doing road trips in the time of no internet, no cell phones.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know what it would be like for a kid today to go on a road trip. Like, yeah, it's not a big deal in the car because I'm just doing the same thing in the car I'm basically doing at home all the time. Hopefully they just put the phone down then once they get to the spot.
You and I mean, I will say this about our generation is we had a very lucky situation where the Game Boy was invented, and the Game Boy got me through a lot of miles. Lot of miles.
I mean, Game Boy, Game Gear,
Yeah, I mean, whatever you had. If you've got a Game Gear, sorry, too bad.
I mean, listen, it may have cost more batteries, but it was in color.
Oh, okay. But really, like, what games were amazing on the Game Gear that like shadowed anything on the Game Boy? Barely.
I don't actually know of either of those systems having any good games.
Oh, the Super Mario Land game series on the Game Boy were fantastic.
So I actually have both a Game Boy or I don't have a Game Gear right now. I just have a Game Boy right now. And so I have done it where you kind of go back and try to play the old games and I just can't get into them anymore. But did you know that, so at least with Game Boy games, you can play it on the Super Nintendo?
Yeah, because there's an adapter, right?
Right, but you cannot do that with the Sega Genesis and the Game Gear because technically the Game Gear could support more colors than the Sega Genesis could.
Ooh.
And so it wasn't wasn't compatible in the same way.
Isn't that interesting?
Super interesting.
The Nintendo Switch currently has in their virtual console just a boatload of games for the Game Boy Advance, the Game Boy Color. And so like that's I think been a pretty slick operation to be able to enjoy those.
You know what I've been playing a lot of the past couple days has been Diablo 4. I don't have a gaming PC, but I do subscribe to like a gaming streaming service. So you pay like $30 a month and then it's basically like you've got a gaming PC in your house.
Right, because it uses the processor power of something else, right?
Yeah, basically, it's really, if you think of it this way, it's like you're using the internet itself as the cable between your monitor and your computer. So the computer that I'm using is technically like in Chicago somewhere, right? And the internet is my video connection between my TV and that there. And you don't need to have that fast of an internet connection to be able to get it without there being any lag, and I just redid my computer room last weekend. I like painted it and reorganized it and I drilled that hole and I did not get electrocuted, but I did do some research to figure out, am I safe to do it here? And I was. And so I ran an Ethernet cable from my computer to the router just so I'd have a more stable experience. And it's amazing. Like it's like, I don't think I'll ever own a gaming PC. I'll never have to spend, thousands of dollars on that because if this is how good it is already in 2023 to just stream it, shit. If like, I'm not going to play any video games this month, I'm just going to cancel the streaming account. You don't lose anything and you're literally just renting a computer basically.
Well, there you go. You might as well enjoy it, right?
Yeah, but Diablo 4 is fun, dude. And you know what? Now that I've got this set up, I can play a bunch of the games that you've been talking about that I couldn't play before. Like I could play Hogwarts Legacy now.
Ooh, you'll enjoy it. It's very good.
I could play the Red Dead Redemption games.
Yeah, play the first one. The second one, I mean, is amazing. Don't get me wrong. But like the first one, I think just the story is so good. I also have been dying to really get into Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom as the next thing that when, if I were to get sick for a couple days, really put all my mind power into some cough medicine and enjoying that game.
Is it not out right now?
No, it's out. It's out, but I don't have any time for it, I
was gonna say, what's stopping you? I mean, make time.
It's beautiful outside, so I've been spending a lot of time outside.
I hear it's really beautiful inside that game.
Is it just gorgeous? I heard that the game allows your imagination to do whatever you want.
I hear the sunrise and sunset in that game rivals anything you're going to see in your backyard, which is where your dog's poop. Listen, in Zelda, you're not going to step into your dog's poop, right?
That's true. In fact,
when you're in your backyard, that's going to happen.
That actually, like just before I started the podcast today, I walked downstairs and I walked past a bedroom that the door was slightly ajar. And I'm like, looks like someone had an accident. And in my house, when it is not solid, we call it a slopper. And this was indeed a slopper. So, and I've got a dog that's starting to become a little geriatric. And unfortunately, these are becoming more the norm for her.
I was gonna say, or were you able to pinpoint which butthole it came out of?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a dog that weighs 55 pounds and a dog that weighs 4 pounds. It's not hard to differentiate, although sometimes our poodle has surprised me. Just, you know. And then they both like have been tooting a lot. Well, okay, so we had a dog when I was growing up named Max, a Wheaten Terrier, whose favorite thing in the world was to go in the car. Would love car rides. Max road tripped like a champ, was awesome at it. And both of our dogs now do not care for the car. They both get extremely nervous. They both, they both have to kind of sit with someone touching and petting them the whole time. Otherwise they, freak out like, oh, am I left all by myself? I don't know. And so it's, we can't take them on the long road trips like they could have been, which is ironic because George road tripped here from Florida. My mom got him while she was down in Florida one winter for a couple months, and he drove all the way back. I mean, George drove himself.
That's amazing.
Got behind the wheel of the RV. He's a great driver when he's got 18 wheels.
The Shaggy dog from Disney.
Like the Shaggy dog or the Shaggy DA. One of my favorite movies is a movie called Matinee. And the premise of the movie Matinee is it's during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it's set in Key West, Florida. And it's a young boy, like 13, 14, whose father is in the Navy and is on one of the like blockade ships. And of course, everyone in Key West, Florida is thinking that, they're going to drop the bomb. And this kid loves going to the movies, especially monster movies. And there's a king of the monster movie named Lawrence Woolsey, played by John Goodman. And he is sort of like he's a mixture of Alfred Hitchcock and Roger Corman and, these guys who made kind of schlocky movies that played on people's like worry about atomic energy. And then he would do things like put buzzers in the seats, and he'd have like skeletons that, drop and run along the top of the crowds. And he is testing out a new style of theater enhancement with a movie he's made called Mant. Half man, half ant. And the woman so you watch like a third of this fake movie, this fake like 50s horror movie, which is awesome because they do things like Bob is undergoing a change right now. Every day, thanks to the atomic particles that are seizing through his bloodstream, he's becoming more ant than man. He's a mant. And it's schlocky and it's wonderful. But they also show snippets of these like fake trailers for movies. And it's directed by Joe Dante, the guy who did Gremlins. And one of the fake trailers is My Father, the Shopping Cart. And it's done like a 50s like Shaggy DA type movie where there's a guy who robs a purse like he's a burglar like in a cat suit, and he goes, give me your purse, and he's running, and then the shopping cart runs into this guy and knocks him over, and this girl goes, Daniel, this is my father, he's a shopping cart. And he goes, oh, it's nice to meet you, sir. And the shopping cart kind of like tips up on its two wheels, and it looks so crappy, but you have to imagine that this was something that maybe they pitched at Disney at one point, because there was what was the name of it? Like My Father, the Car, about a guy whose soul is essentially, put into a car by accident. And,
well, I absolutely love fake movies in movies or in TV shows. So I always think of what is it, Homeless Dad in
Arrested Development,
where he's like, I just want my kids back.
Yep. For Tom Jane to make this gritty drug movie, he had to make a family film.
Yeah.
There's a great SNL sketch where it's when Garth Brooks hosted, and it's the POV of like a movie screen looking out into the audience, and you can just hear the dialogue and the pitch from all these. It's like she's addicted to drugs and it's hard, but she's gonna find a way out. This fall, Shelley Long is my mom, the clown, and then it goes to ow, I feel good, and the idea is that the trailers never end. And they just keep going and going. And all of them have the same premise as like, it's Shelley Long in Star Wars 8, crazier than ever in the outer space. I just get a real kick out. You know, one thing I like to do when I'm on a road trip is I love to go to movie theaters in other towns just to see how they kind of do it, you know?
I remember going to one, oh man, maybe it was in Bismarck. I can't remember. I just remember that the movie theater only sold bucket-sized popcorn. That's what it was called. It was just bucket.
Did you get a bucket?
I got a bucket. And they were like, you can take your bucket with you and bring it back for more popcorn.
Bring your bucket back. Bucket. We don't care.
Yep. Just bucket.
In Bismarck, actually, there's a theater called the Egyptian, I think. It's maybe like a 10 screen. And it's a gorgeous theater. I mean, like the decorations are amazing. And obviously it's themed after like, you know, ancient Egypt. We went a real thrill for me on that road trip I was talking about at the beginning of the episode. We ended up going to see The Nightmare Before Christmas in 3D before they were making movies in 3D, you know, like it wasn't a digital conversion. They were able to turn it into this 3D thing. And I loved it. I thought it was a blast.
Yeah, I remember that. I feel like I saw another 3D with you as well, but maybe it was a different trip. I didn't see Lion King? No, maybe not. I'm thinking of something else, but I do remember
saw Avatar in 3D.
Oh, Avatar, basically Lion King.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. No, I remember liking the 3D for Nightmare, but there were a few moments where it felt like they just applied the effect to have the effect where it didn't actually necessarily do anything to it. But, you know, I'm kind of interested to see like the next generation of immersive movies like that with VR. Because like, what's it going to be like, let's watch Titanic while we're on the Titanic?
Right. Like we're going to go to a screening room that they've established in the Titanic that used to be, you know, like a coal closet or something like that.
Right.
And watch it and have the experience. Hey, speaking of Titanic, your buddy on Reddit, the collector, has made a huge name for himself in this last week. He's got, I mean, Yahoo covered it. He was in Variety. Vanity Fair, I think, is doing a piece.
Yeah, I think his collection is about to blow up.
He might actually get to 1 million.
I think it's about to get a lot bigger than what he's at right now.
How many copies have you sent him?
I've only mailed him 14. I have 69 and a half sitting over here on standby. So it's and I say 69 and a half because it's a 2-tape set. So every once in a while you'll find just lone tapes out in the wild. And I grab those because eventually you can pair them up with missing tapes to make full copies. And so, yeah, right now 69 and a half sitting out in a box in my living room right now.
Ooh, baby.
And so if I were to ship it right now and he opened it right now, I would have the record for the biggest gifted like amount sent to him by at least like 15, maybe even 20 tapes. But I don't know, like I keep putting it off. I got to do it at some point because it's just getting more and more expensive to ship it over time.
I think you need to get on it, dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think you need to send him those copies right now because there's someone right now who used to own like a rip-off Blockbuster franchise, like a Premiere Video, who's been sitting on his VHS tape copies of Titanic, who's like, it's like finally a reason for me to be proud.
I think what really is there's probably a collective out there of people who are like, we're going to band together and make like a donation. Right. And in that case, I know a few people in town I could turn to, but they've always been giving me tapes of Titanic every time they find it.
Okay. So when was the last time you watched Titanic?
Oh God. I mean, it would have been when it came out on VHS.
Nuh-uh, for realsies?
I believe so. I think that was the last time I actually sat down and watched Titanic.
Oh my.
So which means I've seen it through twice because I watched it once in the theater and then I watched it once on VHS, like not long after it released. And I think that's it. I've never watched it on digital video disc. I've never watched it on the Blu-ray, or if there's a 4K release yet, I don't know. I don't even have a 4K player, so I wouldn't be able to anyways.
It must be in 4K at this point. 4K by this point, right?
I would assume so, but you know what? I can find out real quick using
the internets,
the world computer in front of us. Blu-ray.com is one of the best websites out there, even though it's not just Blu-rays that they track, although they do not track VHS though, which is an absolute shame. But we're going to put in Titanic here.
I am a big fan of the app Letterboxd for allowing me to really be able to hone in my movie favorites and to rate stuff and to completely and totally crap on the things that I don't like. Someone told me recently, they're like, well, you obviously don't like anything because I listened to your movie reviews and they're not very, like you seem to not like a lot of stuff. And I said, listen, while I agree, there's a lot of stuff that I do not care for. I see a lot of stuff that most people hate that I advocate for on a very regular basis. So I don't think that you should, get on my case that much.
Titanic is not available on 4K yet.
What?
Yeah, it is not available.
Buy a 3D copy of the DVD
on Blu-ray. You can get 1920 by 1080 Blu-ray, but you cannot get a 4K yet. You can pre-order it, but there's no release date set according to blue-ray.com.
Let me ask you, are you a snob when it comes to watching movies in if it's available in 4K, I only want to watch it in 4K?
Oh, not at all. Not at all. But it's more like, I think it would be really awesome to have access to watching things in like the highest, quality possible. But that's not just, is it, 1080 or is it 4K? I mean, it's also like, how well did they master that copy and what kind of a system are you watching it on? Right. So at some point when I'm able to, I do plan on like putting some serious money into like building a system where I can watch something at its highest quality, because I think that would be awesome, but I don't need to. I mean, I still watch X-Men cartoons on VHS.
Well, that's pretty awesome. That's nice of you. I mean, not nice of you.
Nice. I'm being really kind to the VHS tape. Well, think of it this way: like we all watch videos of all different kinds of quality on the internet every single day, right?
True. So, absolute truth.
It's really like there's a certain level of quality that is really just sort of good enough. Me, using a streaming service for playing video games, like that's not going to give me the experience of someone who has a gaming PC in the room with them with like a maxed out graphics card, and they've got a monitor with like a 220 hertz refresh rate, and they're doing over 200 frames per second, right? And they've got everything up to max, right? That person is clearly going to have a different visual experience than I am having now, but the one I'm having right now is more than good enough. Right? It's like I can barely even tell that I'm streaming it, right? So it's like there's a bare minimum, like there are certain things that I can sort of forgive, like compression artifacts in video. But if it's a quality of like, oh, it's stuttering on playback, right? Oh, I can't get inputs correctly. Or if it's something where like, not all of the audio channels are playing on this disc, right? You're not going to get the full experience. That can kind of suck.
To me, I'm somebody who, if my nostalgia is thick enough, I will gladly like watch something that's in horrible quality and the sound is awful because I just need to scratch that itch. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Well, and there are variations of things that I like a, quote, not a lesser quality, but I think we can say a lower fidelity quality, where like my favorite movie as an adult, meaning not my favorite movie of all time, which is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but my favorite movie as an adult is Blade Runner, but specifically the director's cut of Blade Runner that they released on standard definition DVD. That was how I first watched the movie. And that was when I fell in love with the movie. And there's something to it that has this dreamlike quality when it's at that level of fidelity. Whereas when you watch like the ultimate edition that's been released on Blu-ray. It's still a great film, but yeah, it kind of changed the effect for me a little bit in that things are so crisp and so clear and so much detail is visible that I couldn't pick up on, that it kind of lessened that feeling of surrealism and like being in a liminal space that I kind of got out of watching it the previous way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I can tell. And I think the same thing goes, to some extent for how I listen to music as well.
Sure.
Because there's some stuff that I want to listen to that the only way I can listen to it is some really lo-fi recording that was done at some point.
Yeah.
And so to me, I can totally get past that if I really want to listen to, a version of, I See the Light by Hank Williams Sr. And the only way that was on a record, and someone recorded a record with like a microphone rather than a direct input.
Well,
and I'll be very happy with it.
Some of my favorite recordings of songs are bootlegs from live concerts where it was someone in the audience holding up their phone, but it's just a great rendition of a particular song.
I'll tell you what I can't stand are jeans that are low quality. That is one thing. Like I can't stand low quality jeans.
Hold on. JEANS or GENES? Because that'll take this conversation in a very different direction.
JEANS.
Okay.
Because like lower quality jeans that are like flowing through my body, I don't want anyone messing with those. I already do enough of that by drinking as much Diet Coke as I do. Like sometimes you gotta come up to the point of where you say like, listen, I consume what I consume because I'm doing it. Hey, I gotta talk about something that I discovered yesterday that really ate up a lot of my time.
Okay, and also I need to talk about jeans, but you go.
Oh no, let's stay with jeans. You go first. Like, are we talking about denim jeans, or are we talking about like genetics jeans?
Denim jeans.
Okay, tell me about denim jeans.
I now have 2 pairs of professionally hemmed jeans.
Oh, sir.
Oh my goodness, are they lovely? Do I enjoy wearing these babies?
Is it changing your life?
There's no drag. I'm not getting it caught under the heel of my foot. Totally. The only thing is that it took like most of a month to get them back. And so it makes me kind of go, should I teach myself how to hem just enough sewing so that, because I'm a guy who, let's be honest, I'm going to need to hem my pants the rest of my life. I'm just going to need it because I'm a short guy and they don't sell pants my length up here for as long as I'm living up here. They're not going to. So I could, hire a person to do it, but that's touch and go. They usually have bigger fish to fry. They're like, yeah, I can hem pants, but I work on prom dresses and wedding dresses and tux and all this other stuff. So I think like for that fast turnaround, I may have to learn how to sew.
I mean, I think that's a great idea. I think if you learned I think what you're going to learn is that you want a simple sewing machine.
Yeah, very simple.
Like to me, if you ever started sewing by hand, you would quickly understand that a sewing machine is the only way to go.
Oh, 100%. There's no fucking way I'm going to do it like I'm Martha Washington. Like that's not going to happen. No.
I mean, people can do it, but like you'll know, like, okay, this is big enough, and then maybe like becomes a side hustle for you, is hemming pants for your friends.
God, that'd be a great Sopranos call out, though, if you see a dude sewing, be like, hey, Martha Washington over here.
Yeah. Hey, what's going on with Martha Washington over here? You hemming your pants, huh? You're taking up an inch on those pants? What else you need to get is you also need to get that chalk that they use on fabric. Like when you're getting sized up and they're like a little chalk. Okay, so let me tell you about the obsession that I ended up with yesterday. There is a game online that allows you to, starting with only $20, you make paper clips, and you have to corner the market in paper clips. And so you set the price that the paper clips sell for, and the market reacts to how much they're going to buy. So, for example, if you set a paper clip at $1, you probably have 5% of the market, and so you're only really making, every second, you're probably only making like 10 cents. but it's costing you 16 cents to produce each paper clip based on the price of wire and having to buy the automation machine to get them to go. So you learn like, listen, I'm going to drop the price so that I can make a bunch of money really quick so that I could invest in more machinery so that in the long run, even though I'm losing money right now, I'm going to gain bigger profits in the future. And then you can start doing things like adding into a marketing budget. And every time you add into a marketing budget, the more you charge on your paper clips, the more you retain as far as like market dominance. And as soon as you get to things like where you've got $1 million in the bank, you can buy out your competitor so you can buy more space. I'm telling you, it sounds ridiculous, but I played it for 2 hours and 45 minutes yesterday.
Holy shit.
And I was addicted to it. And by the time I beat the game technically, and this is what it told me. It says full autonomy attained in 2 hours, 40 minutes, and 3 seconds. Lifetime investment revenue report, $614 million, 574,000. I released hypno drones into the world to convince people to buy my paper clips. All of the resources of the earth are now available for clip production. I had so much fun, and it's not like a DOS game, but it's a simple click game, and there's nothing beyond like the button to buy wire, change the price, allow the it's very simple. Did you ever play Dope Wars back in the day?
No, I don't think I've even heard of it.
So neither had Jill when I was explaining. And now that I'm saying it out loud, I understand how like disgusting this sounds, but you're a drug dealer and you start out with like $100 and, 7 ounces of weed, and you can go to different parts of LA. And every time you go to a different part, the price of the drugs and the drugs that they're being currently sold by pushers varies. So cocaine was the most expensive drug, and sometimes it's like, cocaine prices have plummeted. So instead of being $100 an ounce, you could buy cocaine for $10 an ounce. So if you could get enough of that, you'd be good to go. But the more drugs you carry, the more likelihood that the cops will show up. And if the cops show up, you can buy your way out, you can shoot your way out, but you might end up losing drugs while you're running away. Dope Wars was a game that people played it nonstop. In fact, you could play it on a graphing calculator at one point. Like you could download it to your graphing calculator. And it was a game about commerce. It was about supply and demand and allocating your resources. And it was a simple game, right? Like there wasn't much to do other than like, okay, I'm going to sell this and sell this. It's not like it's, you walk over and talk to the barkeep. You just sell your wares and you're done. And that's what this paperclip game reminded me of. And it was interesting and fun, and I loved it. I had a great time playing it. And so I probably won't ever play it again, because now that I've achieved full autonomy, and like one of the things as you get further along, it'll do things like put research into curing male baldness. And like at one point you get to cure cancer, and you take away society's ills, and it's just very, I had a really good time playing it. It was really a lot of fun.
Well, just wait till the DLC comes out.
Sure. The downloadable content for that one.
Yeah, it's going to be erasers.
There you go. Right. Like, oh God. Or maybe that's the rival game that you play with it. Is erase, you played paper clips. Now you got to play erasers.
Well, I think, or if anything, I mean, really, you just played like a game of capitalism. So now play like a game of revolutionaryism, where you have to break down the system that you just built.
I like that. I like that a lot. Hey, I want to play a quick game with you that I just invented. Okay.
God damn it.
It's called Real Wife, Work Wife. Okay. So you tell me which came from. Is this my real wife or my work wife?
Ooh, I like this game. Okay.
And so this is based solely on text conversations. Okay.
Okay. So real wife would be Jill. Work wife would be Amy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So I'll start on what I would consider to be an easy round. Okay.
Am I only going to hear what they're saying? Or am I also hearing what you're saying?
You only what they're saying.
Okay.
I did a funny joke and no one appreciated it.
Oh, that was Jill.
100%.
Yep.
What were the hot topics this morning?
Again, Jill.
Oh, you're doing excellent. Okay. Let's see. I have to go through some screenshots. Christy may need to call in today.
Oh, that's got to be Amy, I guess.
That is Amy.
Yeah, because I mean, why else would Jill have your sister calling in?
Where is the movie?
Ooh, damn. Now that one's right down the middle. Oh, wait a minute. It's not going to be your work wife because she doesn't watch movies. It's Jill.
Oh, that's the thing. She was set to come to me to The Machine, the Burt Kreischer movie.
Oh,
So it was Amy. Okay. Want to give me a timeline? Facepalm emoji.
Oh, that's Amy.
Jill's
never
the thing that gave it away. Was it the facepalm emoji?
Jill is never going to ask you for a timeline.
Oh, she's going to give me a timeline?
She's just going to say, no, she's going to say, what is the timeline? Meaning you've already decided. Like the notion that Amy is prompting you for a timeline means one hasn't been made yet. Can you please generate it so we have it for this? Jill would have assumed you've already done this. What is it?
Okay. I have a pitch for you.
Oh, that's Amy.
Nope, it's Jill.
That's Jill?
Yeah.
What is Jill pitching you?
Jill pitched me an idea that she had for my station and I turned it down. Okay, so this is a great equalizer, okay?
I feel like I've gotten a lot of hits and only 2 misses.
Okay. This one I think could be tough. You got a weird sunburn last week. Make sure you wear a lot of suntan lotion. I'll be checking.
Yeah, I don't think Jill would care about that. That's Amy.
Get this. Both of them texted me virtually the same thing.
Oh.
It would have been fine. So yes, you're right, Amy, but also Jill sent me the same thing. Because I sent them both a picture of a weird sunburn that I got while I was out at the pool. And they both are suntan lotion pushers on like a huge scale.
How do they feel about each other?
Pretty good, I think. You know, they both came with to when I went to Norse Kustfest last year. Like I went for work, so Amy was with, and Jill came with us, and I think that's fine. I think they're good. I don't know. Like if you put them in a room together, I don't know what happens. I don't know what they talk about other than me. Maybe all they do is fact checking. Like JJ said, this is it true? And like, nope, it's completely false. That's totally made up. JJ also said this. In fact, JJ got out of an event because he said this. Was he doing that? Nope. He was at home watching Mad Men. That could be. I mean, maybe that'd be the worst thing in the world is if these two things like collided and then my entire web of deception was completely crumbled.
That would drive me fucking nuts.
I'm very lucky. Recently, I was just talking to Amy and I was like, I'm really lucky to have a partner who understands who I am. It's to the point now where she can look at a menu and tell you what I'm going to order.
Amy can?
Yeah. And it's not just based on, JJ always gets the wings at such and such place. She'll know what my day was like, what my mood is like, and be able to tell you, like, listen, normally JJ would get the wings, but today he's going to get the shrimp tacos because it's a Friday and he likes to eat seafood on Fridays.
But does she have a Diet Pepsi waiting for you?
Yeah, she will. In fact, on more than one occasion, I will walk into work and she'll have stopped at McDonald's and picked me up a fountain Diet Coke from McDonald's, which is the best Diet Coke on the planet. Now, that being said, if you were like, hey, JJ, why don't you reciprocate and go get her a coffee because she likes coffees? I'd be like, I don't fucking know what she wants. I have no idea what she orders from the coffee shop. And I feel bad about that. I do know this. No raw onions. No raw onions.
Oh, they're so good though.
Right. And I know, so for example, with Jill, if there is Diet Mountain Dew on tap, you have Diet Mountain Dew. Otherwise she'll have Diet Coke. And if there's no Diet Coke and no Diet Mountain Dew, so they say like, is Diet Pepsi all right? She'll say no and have a water instead. Okay. When she is out, like, when she's picking like what to eat, like on a road trip, it's every time it's just something different every time. I could never pinpoint it down to one thing that she would need. Versus when Amy was pregnant, she had told me before she was pregnant that one of her favorite things to eat during the summer was cinnamon bears and cold Coca-Cola. And so I stocked our mini fridge with cold Cokes and cinnamon bears. I always had cinnamon bears on my desk so that she could always grab some of those. And
are cinnamon bears like the graham cracker bears, or are these?
No, they're like a gummy bear, but there's that kind of hot, that spicy cinnamon flavor, like a Red Hot.
Yeah.
And so and they're especially good in the summer because if you leave them in the car and they get real soft.
You love food that has been altered by its environment.
Oh, I certainly do. In fact, today I made a specific note on the radio that there are only certain candy bars that are improved by putting them in a freezer. So don't think that just because you put a candy bar in a freezer, you've made it better, because that's not always the case.
I think you need to make a cooking book called "Just Leave It Out for a While." It's like these are all the foods I like after I've left them out for a while.
Give it a little bit.
Give it a little bit. Let it breathe. Let it breathe.
Listen, I know that you really love bread, but have you tried crusty bread?
Listen, guys, the pizza's here, but trust me, let's leave it for 3 hours and hit it then. That's when it's really good.
I mean, the cheese has congealed at that point, so it's nice because when you get a slice, you're not pulling the stretchy cheese; you're just getting the slice that you want.
You know what makes me so happy?
That's how Giovanni's pizza used to be.
I gotta go. So I was at Mick's office just the other night with some friends having cheapo burgers and beers, and I noticed that they say that their pizza there is Giovanni's Pizza. It's got the old logo, and then it said the distribution company underneath it. I think it was like Syntec or something like that, like distributed by Syntec. So I want to get a hold of one of these pizzas. I'll just go there again at some point and order one. I want to see, is it the Giovanni's I remember, or is it really just, the logo, went along with this purchase, but now it's, a totally different kind of frozen pizza that they're making? Because if they make actual, like the Giovanni's pizzas that I grew up eating, that'll be the thing that replaces Casey's for me. By the way, Casey's still has their triple pepperoni pizza, and I think they're going to be keeping it.
I tell you what, I'll go and I'll taste test the Giovanni's pizza and get back to you. And normally I'd be like, hey, why don't we go and check it out? But I didn't get invited to your outing recently, as you noted, that you and some friends went and had a delightful evening, and I didn't get invited. So I want to make sure that I don't invite you when I go and enjoy some delicious or undelicious, I'll find out, Giovanni's pizza at Mick's office. And I'll probably eat it by myself. And when they're like, hey, you expecting other people? Be like, no, they're already here this week. And I didn't get invited. I didn't even find out about it until later on.
That's a lot of talk coming from a guy who saw the Super Mario Brothers movie without me.
Yeah, but I had to do that because you're not allowed to go to children's movies anymore.
Well, you're not allowed in public. So,
by the way, quick little one over. I've been sharing my unpopular opinion this week, which is just because you can get Lin-Manuel Miranda to work on your movie doesn't mean that you should, because that dude wrote a new song for the Little Mermaid live action movie that was garbage called Scuttlebutt. And it's sung by Aquafina, and you can tell immediately, you're like, yeah, this is a Lin-Manuel Miranda piece. And I just think, like, I've heard him add stuff, like he has like a little rap version thing that he does in the Mary Poppins reboot, and just because you can get Lin-Manuel Miranda doesn't mean that you should. Don't get me wrong, I loved Hamilton. It is an emotional powerhouse when you watch that show. But he also did write some other stuff that wasn't great. So this dude's not Midas. He's a regular man, just like anybody else is.
Have you received serious pushback on this unpopular opinion?
A couple of people have. A couple of people have been like, Lin-Manuel Miranda is just a musical genius. And I'm like, is he?
Are these the people who are like, he's the Stephen Sondheim of our generation?
Yeah, pretty much. They're the people who are like, he can do no wrong. And I'm like, listen, Stephen Sondheim had a movie that closed in 2 weeks on Broadway. I can't remember what it was, but like it played and everyone was like, ooh, no, thank you. So the thing is like not just because someone is popular doesn't mean that they're the perfect choice. Sometimes they are, but not always. And that's what I'm saying is there's no reason there should have been like, what's the scuttlebutt? The scuttlebutt, the princess did it. Scuttlebutt. It doesn't work. It's a horrible song. And they cut it, and they put that song in, and yet they cut the song Les Poissons, which is one of my favorite from The Little Mermaid.
Wait, what?
Yeah, you know the song Les Poissons?
Oh, yeah.
Poissons, Les Poissons. How I love Les Poissons. Love to cut and to serve little fish. Chop, chop, chop. They got rid of that because they thought it would be too cartoony. And I was like, wait a minute, you got talking fish and a crab with a Caribbean accent, and you think it's going to be too cartoony for your hyper-realistic mermaid movie?
What I want to see from Disney is some new 2D animation musicals.
I would love that.
There've got to be just endless untapped potential stories out there for them to bring through the House of Mouse and kind of do that kind of level of production quality, because then they'll have more IP that they can just hit for money again over and over in the generations to come.
You know, I think it would be a good one is a dog who it turns out like was the crux of us getting our independence from Great Britain. So like it's a dog that belongs to George Washington. It's called like Washington's Pooch.
Yes.
And it's
a Disney war film.
Yeah. And he's got like it's his job like on the animal side to like get everyone going and ready. And so there's like a super evil colonel in the British Army, and then like two cats you throw up on him, and then he goes like, oh, I hate I was gonna do a French accent there. I hate the cats. But then he trips over a line that an old bloodhound had pulled. It's very much Lady and the Tramp meets the American Revolution.
Yeah, you can see like a bunch of reused animation cells.
Yeah, right? In fact, the Colonel is pretty much like the evil aunt from the Lady and the Tramp.
Mm-hmm.
He's already got like the big pompadour haircut that would have been popular with British soldiers. Just throwing that one out there. But maybe someone else has got a better pitch for like the Disney story that we're missing. I still think that my idea for a Sesame Street movie needs to be made, where they're trying to gentrify the neighborhood and an evil developer buys up all of Sesame Street and then kicks all of our lovable characters out, and they have to find out or they have to live in other parts of New York City. And I know the scene, like the clinch scene of this whole thing is, and I feel like it's Will Arnett who's the evil developer. I think he'd be perfect. And it's a big ribbon cutting, and he's telling everyone about how this dumpy old street is going to make way for a new round of like high-end condos that he's building. And he snips the thing, and then he gets in the wrecker because he's going to be the bulldozer. And then you see from the streets, it's almost like the streets perspective looking towards the bulldozer. You see a foot come down, but it's Big Bird's big foot. And he goes, get that bird out of here. You don't belong here anymore. And then all the other creatures stand beside him and beside him, beside him, beside him. And they're all blocking this thing. And they're like, we're a family and families stick together. And he goes, you've got no business to be here. I bought up this whole property. And they're like, oh, yeah. And then they have gotten Sesame Street declared as like a historical place.
There's got to be
all the children of the world.
There's got to be a scene where Oscar the Grouch teaches the other members how to live on the streets, because he's the only one who actually does.
I think that Oscar ends up being the guy who gets duped by the villain of this movie, right? Like he's promising like Oscar, like, have you never been to Trash Island? And it's that island that's off the New York coast where they dump all their garbage, like as a landfill. And he tells Oscar about how great it is, and Oscar goes, that's great. And then he signs away like the rights to Sesame Street for some reason that he has. So and then everyone's like, Oscar, you know, like we can't be together anymore. And he is, you know, he's remorseful.
He's like an eccentric owner of Sesame Street, and no one was aware that he was like, he was just letting them all live there.
Yeah. Wouldn't that make sense? Wouldn't it make sense if you found out that like Grouchco is the one that actually owns all of the property around there, and that's why he's been there since the beginning?
It's like a really long episode of Undercover Boss.
Okay. Someone called the Sesame Workshop. We're ready to go. We've got the idea. We're ready to start shooting.
How does his trash can function? Is it something where it's like Artie's phone booth, or not phone booth? What did he live in, a porta potty, or was it a phone? No, he lived in a porta potty in The Adventures of Pete and Pete.
Yep.
And where like you go inside and then like the TARDIS on Doctor Who, it's suddenly this massive space, or is he literally just cramped into the bottom of a garbage can and then he's just down there?
It is a direct portal to Grouchland.
Okay.
So essentially when he's talking to you out of the garbage can, he's dangling just above the portal. Okay. And then he goes into Grouchland through the portal. That's why they can pick up the can and he can move anywhere.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. That was explained in Elmo's Adventures in Grouchland, the film with Mandy Patinkin.
Does he wither if he leaves the garbage can? Like, is it like something where he needs to keep one foot in Grouchland, otherwise his essence fades?
No, Grouches can go wherever they want. And in fact, other beings can end up in Grouchland. They're just sort of more or less supposed to be the gatekeepers to Grouchland. So for example, it's Elmo is fighting with another Muppet about his blankie, and his blankie gets thrown into Oscar's garbage can, and Oscar uses it to blow his nose, and then he shoves it down, and Elmo goes like, oh no, and he jumps into Oscar's garbage can, and he falls through the portal into Grouchland and has to get his blankie back, and he meets all the other Grouches. And what's funny is when they fleshed out Grouchland, it's a place where like when you go through a car wash, it throws dirt and diapers on your car. So it's like an uncar wash.
Okay, it's like a bizarro world, because I was thinking it sounds like that's the perfect answer to the housing crisis right there. Is like, well, you just need to go inside this garbage can. There's all this wide open land. You can just settle wherever, but it would be stinky there. It wouldn't be pleasant.
Right. And like, the people are not like the people of Sesame Street, where they're like, welcome to Grouchland, now scram. So I don't know if they would be very welcoming to a group of people who are not only racially mixed, but also skin fabrically mixed. I don't know if they'd be open to the likes of Gordon and Bob, and then also, you're opening it up to Mr. Snuffleupagus and a giant turkey, as Oscar tends to call Big Bird.
I mean, I want to know what the power structure is like in Grouchland. Do they keep a standing army? Do they have elected leaders in like a town hall? Is it just a different location on Earth, or is it a dimension sort of underneath our dimension? Is it a pocket dimension where you're actually just living inside of a trash can, but it just makes it look like it's somewhere larger? Are there multiple trash cans, or does Oscar have the only portal? Or or could Oscar go from one trash can to another trash can, just like in the Matrix with phone booths, where I just to get back to Grouchland, I need to just get into a garbage can? And what happens if it's a recycling bin? Or what happens if it's just like a cardboard box that you set up for refuse real quick when you're like moving out of an apartment?
I've got a couple of answers and a couple of, I guess we're going to have to flesh it out. So number one, I believe that the portal is only in Oscar's garbage can. Oscar is the one Grouch who can really travel between both worlds.
Wow. Okay.
Because the other Grouches exist, it seems to be only in the Grouchland area. And so, and they're walking around. They don't seem to be saying, oh, I need to go home to my can. You don't see other Grouches in the Sesame Street world. So I'm assuming that he's the ambassador to, Earth 67 or whatever it happens to be. That being said, it is definitely like a different world or dimension, because at one point there's like a 6-story tall chicken. And that just doesn't exist on Earth. We don't have a giant chicken like that.
Uh-huh. And is the rest of Grouchland aware of our reality?
No, I don't believe so. But I do know this, that there are other people, kind of like the Wizard of Oz, from our world who have gone into the Grouch world and established themselves kind of like the wizard in the Wizard of Oz did. In this case, it's Mandy Patinkin, who's a guy named Huxley, and he wants everything that he wants. He doesn't like to share. And he sings a song about how if he touches it, it's his, belongs to me. And there's also it's not Vivica A. Fox, who's the Vanessa Williams. Vanessa Williams is like the queen of trash, and she does some stuff. So it's definitely a situation in Grouchland that is very I mean, they're going to indict the president of Grouchland pretty quick, and so it does mirror our world in some ways. That's going to wrap it up for today's show. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to help us continue to produce new episodes each week, visit jjmeetsworld.com, where you can donate to our Patreon, pick up some swag at the merch shop, or follow our link to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. You can also follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, all the sites the cool kids are using these days. JJ Meets World is produced every week by Tucker Lucas. You can find out more about Tucker's work by visiting moonbasemaria.com. If you want to get in touch with your host with the most, check out linebenders.com, where you can find direct contact info for JJ or booking information. The thing about Grouchland is that they're all polyamorous.